The legacy of pirate diversity, though often overshadowed by tales of buried treasure and grand battles, is a significant one. It highlights the complex social dynamics of the maritime world, the desperate choices faced by marginalized individuals, and the surprising ways in which alternative societies can emerge in defiance of established norms. You are a witness to this hidden history, a participant in a world where the rules were rewritten, and where, for a fleeting moment, freedom and opportunity could be found, regardless of who you were or where you came from. The creak of the ship, the murmur of diverse voices, and the shared laughter of a motley crew are the grim lullabies of a life lived on the fringes. A life where the true treasure was often the camaraderie itself. You find yourself standing on the deck of a pirate ship, not the gleaming, pristine vessel of legend, but a working, weathered beast of the sea. The wood beneath your bare feet is rough and splintered, worn smooth in places by countless footsteps. The air is thick with the scent of salt, tar, stale sweat, and something else, a faint, pervasive odor of unwashed bodies and damp wood. This isn't the romanticized adventure you might have read about. This is a cramped, often uncomfortable existence, defined by the whims of the ocean and the harsh realities of life at sea. You've witnessed the surprising diversity and internal camaraderie of a pirate crew, a motley collection of individuals bound by shared risk and the lure of plunder. But now, as the ship sails onward, you begin to understand that this unconventional society, for all its democratic leanings, also possesses a grim, often brutal system of justice and punishment. Life outside the law demands its own strictures, and the consequences for breaking the pirate code are swift, severe, and designed to maintain order in a world where chaos is always just a breath away. Your clothes, likely salvaged or patched, cling to you, perpetually damp from the sea spray or sweat. You try to keep your balance as the ship pitches and rolls, a constant, subtle dance with the waves. The rigging above you is a dizzying tangle of ropes and spars, creaking and groaning with every gust of wind. You learn quickly to keep an eye on the sails, their vast expanse of canvas billowing and snapping. A powerful engine driving your floating home. The first time you witness a punishment, it sends a chill down your spine. A crewmate, perhaps caught stealing from another's share or shirking duties during a crucial moment, is brought before the captain and quartermaster. The air becomes thick with tension, the usual boisterousness of the deck replaced by a hushed, expectant silence. The articles, those very rules that promised fairness, now dictate the consequences. The punishment, often a flogging, is carried out publicly, a stark warning to all who might consider defying the code. You hear the crack of the whip, the grunt of the punished man, and the collective intake of breath from the crew. It's a harsh reminder that freedom on a pirate ship comes with its own heavy price. The sounds are just as disorienting at first. There's the constant slap of waves against the hull, the rhythmic creak of the timbers, and the insistent whine of the wind through the rigging. Closer. You hear the low murmur of voices, the clink of metal, the occasional shout from a deckhand. Every sound is amplified, every whisper seems to carry across the open deck, adding to the pervasive sense of being constantly exposed to the elements. You realize quickly that true silence here is rare. It's merely the brief absence of overt human activity. A deceptive calm before the next squall or the next order. Flogging, while brutal, was a common historical fact in all navies and merchant services of the era. However, on a pirate ship, the number of lashes was often stipulated by the articles and sometimes even voted upon by the crew, rather than being solely at the captain's whim. Imagine the paradox: a democratic decision to inflict pain. This collective agreement, while not lessening the agony, perhaps gave it a veneer of legitimacy in the eyes of the crew. You might even hear a grim joke that, at least on a pirate ship, you knew exactly how many stripes you were getting. Unlike the unpredictable moods of a naval captain, as you shuffle along, you notice the details, the grim realities that are now your world. The deck isn't just a flat surface, it's a bustling, dangerous workplace. You pass coils of rope, stacks of barrels, and the ever-present cannon, their dark muzzles pointing menacingly outwards. You glimpse faces in the dim light below deck or under the harsh sun, tanned, weathered, often scarred. Their eyes, though, hold something else, a flicker of grim determination, a shared understanding of the precarious life they inhabit. Desertion, especially before a battle or with valuable information, was considered one of the gravest offenses. The punishment for such an act was often marooning, being left on a deserted island with minimal provisions, usually a bottle of water and a pistol with a single shot. Imagine the terror of watching the ship sail away, leaving you alone on a desolate patch of sand, surrounded by the vast, indifferent ocean. It was a slow, agonizing death sentence, a horrifying deterrent against betrayal. The sun beats down, the sand burns your feet, and the silence is deafening, broken only by the sound of the waves and the frantic beating of your own heart. A common historical fact, often surprising to those who imagine pirates as lawless individualists, is that pirate ships often operated with a surprising degree of democracy. Many pirate crews had a written code of conduct, sometimes called articles or chances, which outlined rules for sharing plunder, assigning duties, and even electing officers. Imagine a ship where the captain wasn't an absolute monarch, but someone elected by the crew, and who could even be voted out if deemed unfit. It was a radical concept for its time, a stark contrast to the brutal hierarchy of naval or merchant vessels. You're not just on a ship, you're on a floating, albeit dangerous, democracy. A unique and little-known detail about marooning was that the pistol given to the marooned pirate was often loaded with only one shot. This wasn't a gesture of mercy, but a cruel choice: either use the shot to kill a small animal for food, or, more likely, to end your own suffering quickly rather than endure a prolonged, agonizing death by thirst and starvation. It was a truly grim act of justice, designed to maximize psychological torment. You might even hear a pirate quip that at least they gave you a choice, even if it was a terrible one. You pass a group of sailors huddled together, their faces streaked with grime, their clothes patched and worn. One of them is trying to mend a torn sail, his hands calloused and nimble. The needle flashes in the sunlight, illuminating his focused features for a moment before he pulls the thread tight. You feel a pang of something akin to respect for their resilience, but it's quickly swallowed by your own burgeoning awareness of the harshness of this life. You're all in this together, a collective of strangers bound by the shared experience of the sea. Mutiny, the ultimate betrayal of the captain and the articles, was also met with extreme prejudice. If a mutiny failed, the instigators could expect no mercy, often facing immediate execution, sometimes by hanging from the yardarm. The sight of a man dangling lifelessly against the sky, swaying with the motion of the ship, is a chilling spectacle, a visceral warning against challenging the established order. This was the ultimate assertion of authority, a bloody reaffirmation of the pirate code. The air grows heavier, more oppressive, especially below deck. You realize the smell isn't just from the sea, it's from something far more immediate. A unique and little-known detail about pirate life was the constant battle against vermin, particularly rats and cockroaches. These pests thrived in the damp, dark holds, feasting on provisions and spreading disease. They were a constant, unsettling presence, scurrying through the shadows, their eyes gleaming in the dim light. You might even feel one brush against your leg in the darkness, sending a shiver of disgust and fear up your spine. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the unsanitary conditions. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the effectiveness of such brutal punishments in maintaining order on pirate ships. Did the fear of flogging, marooning, or hanging truly deter crime and maintain discipline? Or did it foster resentment and a desperate sense of fatalism among the crew? Historians still grapple with the psychological impact of these harsh penalties on the overall cohesion and morale of pirate societies. You finally reach your assigned station, perhaps a spot on deck for watch, or a cramped bunk below. The boatswain, a gruff individual with a booming voice, barks out orders. You're shown your duties, perhaps swabbing the deck, mending rigging, or manning a cannon. Looking out over the railing, you see it for the first time, the vast, endless expanse of the ocean. It's a beautiful, yet terrifying sight. A reminder of both freedom and the overwhelming power of nature. The quartermaster, as you recall, played a crucial role in maintaining justice. He was the arbiter of disputes, the one who ensured that the articles were followed, and often the one who oversaw the carrying out of punishments. His authority in these matters was significant, balancing the captain's power and ensuring a degree of fairness that was often absent in other maritime contexts. You see him listening intently to grievances, his face stern, his judgment often final. The silence of the open sea is broken by a sudden, sharp crack overhead, followed by the flapping of canvas. A sail has ripped, sending a flurry of activity across the deck. You instinctively grab a rope, your heart pounding against your ribs. This is it. This is the reality. The initial awe gives way to a cold, creeping understanding of the constant work required to keep this vessel afloat and operational. You realize that every moment here is a gamble, every breath a stolen luxury. The concept of trial by combat, or dueling, while not formally part of the articles, was sometimes an informal way to settle serious disputes between crew members that couldn't be resolved by the quartermaster. These were often brutal, no-holds-barred fights, sometimes to the death, often with cutlasses or pistols. While discouraged by captains who valued every able-bodied man, they were a grim reality of a society where personal honor and retribution held sway. You might even hear a pirate joke that the only thing sharper than their cutlasses was their temper. The days quickly blur into an endless cycle of watch duty, maintenance, and waiting. The sun, when it appears, offers little comfort, only highlighting the grime. The nights are worse, filled with the constant threat of storms, the chilling sound of distant waves, and the gnawing cold. Sleep, when it comes, is fitful and shallow, haunted by the sounds and smells of the ship. The theft of another pirate's share of plunder was a particularly heinous crime, as it directly undermined the equitable system that held the crew together. Punishment for such an act could range from severe flogging to being put ashore at the next available port with nothing but the clothes on your back. A fate often worse than death for a man with no legitimate prospects. It was a swift and decisive way to reinforce the sanctity of the shared loot. You quickly learn the unspoken rules, the subtle cues that mean the difference between efficiency and chaos. The way the wind shifts, the faint outline of a distant sail, the sudden silence from the lookout. Each is a sign, a warning. You become acutely aware of your own vulnerability, the thin line separating you from the vast, indifferent ocean. Your senses are heightened, your nerves frayed, constantly on edge. It's a life lived on the brink, where every shadow holds a potential threat, and every sound could be your last. The treatment of captives was also subject to a grim code. While often brutal, pirates sometimes spared the lives of merchant crews, particularly if they surrendered without a fight. Those with valuable skills, like carpenters, navigators, or surgeons, might be coerced into joining the pirate crew, given a choice between a life of piracy or a swift death. This pragmatic approach, while not merciful, was a form of self-preservation for the pirates, ensuring they maintained a skilled crew. The sheer monotony of it all is almost as challenging as the danger. Hours stretch into days, days into weeks, each one a carbon copy of the last. You eat hardtack and salted meat, drink stale water, and try to find some semblance of comfort in the cramped, damp confines of your bunk. The lice, a constant companion, crawl over your skin, an irritating reminder of your degraded existence. You scratch, you curse, but there's no escape. It's a small indignity in a world of immense ones. The psychological impact of living under such a harsh system of justice is profound. You learn to walk a fine line, to adhere strictly to the articles, and to avoid any actions that might incur the wrath of the crew or the quartermaster. The constant awareness of potential punishment creates a pervasive sense of anxiety, even for those who follow the rules. It's a life lived on the edge, where a single misstep can lead to a swift and brutal end. One of the academic debates still open for discussion revolves around the true motivations behind men choosing a pirate's life. Was it primarily greed and the pursuit of riches? Or was it a desperate escape from the brutal conditions and harsh discipline of legitimate merchant or naval service? The lines are blurry, and the individual experiences varied wildly, making it a complex area of study. You, however, are simply trying to survive the next storm. The ship's articles of agreement often included clauses about gambling and fighting among the crew. While gambling was a popular pastime, excessive losses or cheating could lead to disputes that escalated into violence. The articles aimed to prevent such internal conflicts from jeopardizing the ship's cohesion. Punishments for fighting might involve a loss of plunder shares, or even a period in irons, a grim reminder of the need for internal peace. You find yourself developing a dark sense of humor, a coping mechanism against the overwhelming despair. Someone cracks a joke about the cook's ability to make anything taste like salted boot leather, and a ripple of strained laughter goes through the group. It's a brief, fleeting moment of levity, a tiny spark of humanity in the darkness. You even hear a dark jest about the ship being so leaky. It could probably float better as a sieve. It's a grim chuckle, but a chuckle nonetheless. Another sailor trying to lighten the mood. Quips that his scurvy is so advanced, he's pretty sure he could win a prize at a rotten fruit convention. You manage a weak smile. The concept of no quarter given, while often associated with pirates, was a declaration that no mercy would be shown to a resisting enemy. This was a psychological tactic, designed to encourage swift surrender. If a merchant ship resisted fiercely and was eventually overcome, the pirate crew might then exact a brutal revenge, slaughtering the crew to send a message to future victims. It was a terrifying display of power, a grim warning. You might even hear a pirate boast that their reputation alone was enough to make ships surrender. The days bleed into one another, marked only by the shifting of watches and the occasional terrifying burst of activity. Perhaps the sighting of a potential prize. You learn to sleep standing up, leaning against the mast, your cutlass feeling like an extension of your arm. You learn to ignore the cold, the damp, the constant itching. You learn to live with the fear, to push it down, to function despite its suffocating presence. This isn't just sailing, it's an endurance test of the human spirit, a brutal stripping away of everything you once knew about comfort and safety. You are no longer just a person, you are a cog in a vast, grinding machine, and your sole purpose is to survive. The use of the black spot, while largely a literary invention from Treasure Island, reflects the real fear of ostracism and condemnation within a pirate crew. While not a physical mark, a pirate who consistently broke the code or was deemed a liability could find himself shunned. His authority eroded, and eventually Pauai, facing a vote for his removal or punishment. The psychological pressure of losing the trust and respect of your shipmates was immense. You've survived your first taste of pirate life. The constant sway, the pervasive smells, the endless work. Now, as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, you begin to understand that this chaotic existence isn't as lawless as the legends suggest. In fact, beneath the veneer of rebellion and plunder, pirate ships often harbored a surprisingly structured, even democratic society, a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchies of the legitimate world you left behind. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the degree to which pirate justice was truly fair compared to the legal systems of the time. While pirate crews often had a voice in punishments, were these decisions truly impartial? Or were they influenced by personal grudges, mob mentality, or the immediate needs of the ship? The complexities of justice in an outlaw society remain a nuanced area of scholarly inquiry. As the evening watch begins, you notice a subtle shift in the ship's rhythm. The day's frantic activity gives way to a more relaxed atmosphere, though vigilance never truly ceases. You see men gathered in small groups, sharing stories, mending clothes, or simply staring out at the vast ocean. It's during these quieter moments that the true nature of pirate governance becomes apparent. You hear hushed conversations about the Articles, a term that refers to the ship's written code of conduct, a document that every crew member agreed to upon joining. You learn to read the subtle cues of the crew, to understand when a situation is escalating, and to know when to step back. You witness the grim satisfaction of collective justice, and the chilling finality of a sentence carried out. It's a harsh education, one that teaches you the brutal realities of power and consequence in a world without formal courts or prisons. This concept of articles is a common historical fact, often surprising to those who envision pirates as purely anarchic. These were not mere suggestions, they were legally binding contracts among the crew, outlining everything from how plunder would be divided to rules against fighting on board, and even compensation for injuries sustained in battle. Imagine it for a moment, a contract signed by men who were considered outlaws, yet who adhered to a strict, self-imposed legal framework. It was a testament to their desire for order and fairness within their illicit enterprise. The punishment by keel hauling, a gruesome form of maritime torture where a sailor was dragged under the keel of the ship, was largely a myth for pirates, more associated with naval discipline. However, the fear of such brutal punishments, whether real or imagined, contributed to the overall atmosphere of dread that pervaded life at sea. You might hear a pirate joke that the only thing worse than a keel hauling was the cook's stew, which was saying something. You learn that the captain, despite the popular image of an all-powerful tyrant, was often elected by the crew. His authority, while absolute in battle, was limited in other matters. Decisions regarding the ship's course, the next target, or even the punishment of a crewmate often required a vote from the entire crew. This was a radical departure from the naval and merchant services, where captains held unquestioned authority, often enforced with brutal discipline. Here, your voice, as a common sailor, actually matters. The constant threat of being hanged by legitimate authorities was the ultimate punishment for any pirate. This external threat, remember, also reinforced the need for internal discipline and loyalty. If caught, your life was forfeit, and the only hope was to fight to the last breath. This shared danger, this common fate, often bound the crew together more tightly than any internal code. This democratic structure extended to other roles as well. The quartermaster, a figure often as powerful as the captain, was also elected. His role was crucial. He was responsible for distributing provisions, mediating disputes among the crew, and overseeing the division of plunder. He was essentially the crew's representative, ensuring fairness and preventing the captain from abusing his power. You see him moving among the men, listening intently, his presence commanding a quiet respect. The pirate ship, for all its talk of freedom, was ultimately a tightly controlled environment, where discipline, however brutal, was essential for survival. The system of justice, while harsh, was designed to maintain order, to ensure the equitable distribution of plunder, and to protect the collective enterprise from internal threats. You are a participant in this grim dance, living by its rules, fearing its consequences, and forever marked by the harsh realities of justice on the high seas. The crack of the whip, the mournful cry of the gulls over a deserted island, and the creak of the gallows are the grim lullabies of a life lived by the sword. A life where the pursuit of freedom came with the ever-present shadow of brutal retribution. A unique and little-known detail about pirate articles was the provision for booty, or compensation for injuries. If a pirate lost a limb or suffered a debilitating injury in battle, the articles often stipulated a specific amount of money, or a larger share of the plunder as compensation. This was a form of early disability insurance, a practical measure to ensure that those who sacrificed for the crew were not left destitute. Imagine the stark contrast to legitimate services, where injured sailors often faced poverty and neglect. You might even hear someone joke, "Well, if I lose an arm, at least I'll be rich enough to buy a fancy peg leg." You've navigated the brutal justice of the pirate code, understanding that even in a world outside the law, order is maintained through swift and often merciless retribution. But as the sun rises and sets, painting the endless ocean in familiar hues, you begin to sense a subtle yet profound shift in the winds of fortune. The golden age of piracy, the very era that brought you to this life of daring and danger, is slowly, inexorably, drawing to a close. The forces that once allowed pirates to flourish are now turning against them, tightening their grip, and making the open sea a far more perilous place. The articles also laid out strict rules regarding discipline. While punishments could be harsh, flogging, marooning, or even death, they were often decided by a vote of the crew, not solely by the captain. This meant that justice, however brutal, was often seen as collective rather than arbitrary. Disputes among crew members would be brought before the quartermaster, and if unresolved, put to a vote. This system, while far from perfect, offered a degree of fairness and accountability that was rare in the maritime world of the time. The first signs are subtle. Perhaps fewer merchant ships are sighted, or those you do encounter are better armed, more vigilant. The whispers in port grow more urgent, speaking of increased naval patrols, of bounties on pirate heads, and of the relentless pursuit of notorious captains. The carefree abandon that once defined pirate life begins to give way to a pervasive sense of apprehension, a constant awareness of the tightening net. You find yourself scanning the horizon with greater intensity, your hand resting instinctively on your cutlass, knowing that every distant sail could now be a hunter, not a victim. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the true extent of democracy on pirate ships. Were these articles genuinely egalitarian, or were they simply a pragmatic way to maintain order and prevent mutiny in a volatile environment? Historians still debate whether the pirate code reflected a genuine desire for social equality, or was merely a clever system of checks and balances to ensure the crew's loyalty and effectiveness. Justa, however, are simply grateful for a system that offers some protection from arbitrary cruelty. The growing strength and determination of the major naval powers, particularly the British Royal Navy, is a common historical fact that marked the beginning of the end for piracy. After years of war and internal conflicts, nations like Great Britain were finally able to dedicate significant resources to suppressing piracy, viewing it as a major threat to their burgeoning global trade. Imagine fleets of well-armed warships, specifically tasked with hunting down pirate vessels, their captains driven by orders to show no quarter. This shift in naval priorities was a death knell for the freewheeling pirate life. You notice that the crew, despite their rough exterior, often adheres to these rules with surprising diligence. There's a shared understanding that breaking the articles jeopardizes everyone's safety and livelihood. Stealing from a comrade, deserting in battle, or bringing women aboard without permission were all serious offenses, often met with severe punishment. The collective good of the ship outweighed individual desires, a stark lesson learned quickly in this dangerous profession. The establishment of permanent naval bases in key strategic locations, such as Jamaica and later the American colonies, allowed these navies to project power more effectively across the Caribbean and Atlantic. These bases provided crucial points for resupply, repair, and the coordination of anti-piracy campaigns. They meant that pirates could no longer simply disappear into remote coves. Their havens were becoming increasingly vulnerable, their escape routes diminishing. You might hear a grim joke that the only thing growing faster than their beards was the number of warships on their tail. The articles also addressed the division of plunder. This was perhaps the most crucial aspect of pirate life, the primary motivation for many. Every crew member received a share, with officers typically receiving more. But even the lowliest cabin boy got something. This equitable distribution, again, stood in stark contrast to merchant ships where sailors received fixed wages, regardless of the value of the cargo. Here, every capture was a shared victory, and every man had a vested interest in the success of the venture. A unique and little-known detail about the decline of piracy was the widespread use of pardons or acts of grace. Governments, realizing that sheer force alone was insufficient, offered general pardons to pirates who surrendered and renounced their illicit ways. While many pirates distrusted these offers, some, weary of the constant danger and eager for a chance at a legitimate life, took them. This strategy effectively divided pirate communities, weakening their numbers and their resolve. Imagine the internal debates among a crew risk the gallows, or take a chance on a pardon and a life of anonymity. The constant threat of capture and execution by naval forces also played a role in shaping pirate society. The shared danger fostered a strong sense of camaraderie and loyalty. You were all in it together, facing the same grim fate if caught. This shared vulnerability created a bond that was often stronger than any formal discipline. You might even hear a dark jest about how the only thing more certain than death and taxes is a pirate hanging. The legal framework also became increasingly sophisticated. Laws against piracy were strengthened, and the process of trying and executing captured pirates became more efficient and public. Naval officers were given greater authority to act against suspected pirates, and the concept of no quarter for resisting pirates became more widely applied. The gallows, a stark symbol of state power, became a common sight in port towns, a chilling deterrent to those who dared to defy the crown. You might even hear a pirate quip that the only thing more certain than death and taxes was a good hanging if you got caught. The process of electing a captain was a serious affair. It often involved a vote, sometimes even a secret ballot, with candidates presenting their case to the crew. The chosen captain had to demonstrate not just bravery, but also navigational skill, leadership, and a willingness to share the risks and rewards. If a captain proved cowardly or incompetent, the crew had the right to depose him, a power rarely seen in other maritime professions. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the precise tipping point that led to the rapid decline of the golden age of piracy. Was it primarily the overwhelming naval force, the effectiveness of the pardon strategy, the changing economic landscape, or a combination of all these factors? Historians continue to analyze the complex interplay of forces that brought an end to this notorious era, trying to pinpoint the critical moment when the tide truly turned against the buccaneers. The parley was another interesting aspect of pirate conduct, though it often existed more in legend than in common practice. While not strictly part of the articles, the idea of a formal discussion or negotiation with a captured vessel, rather than immediate slaughter, sometimes occurred, particularly if the pirates sought to recruit new crew members or acquire specific goods without unnecessary bloodshed. It was a pragmatic approach, not always driven by mercy. You might hear a veteran joke that the only parley they ever had was with a bottle of rum. The changing economic landscape also played a significant role. As European powers established more stable colonial administrations and trade routes became more secure, the opportunities for easy plunder diminished. Merchant ships were better organized, often sailing in convoys or carrying letters of marque, making them harder targets. The vast, unregulated wealth that once fueled piracy began to consolidate under legitimate mercantile control, leaving fewer rich prizes for the taking. The ship itself was more than just a vessel. It was a home, a community, and a symbol of their rebellion against established authority. Every man had a role, every hand was needed, and every life was valuable. This interdependence fostered a unique social dynamic, where cooperation was essential for survival. The cramped quarters and constant proximity meant that personal disputes had to be resolved quickly and fairly, or they could jeopardize the entire ship. The internal dynamics of pirate crews also began to suffer. With increased pressure from naval forces and fewer successful captures, morale could plummet. Disputes over dwindling plunder became more frequent, and the democratic structures that once held crews together could fray under the strain. The camaraderie, once so strong, could be tested by despair and desperation, leading to internal conflicts and even mutinies against their own captains. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the extent to which pirate societies influenced or were influenced by the broader social and political movements of their time. Did their democratic structures and egalitarian practices reflect nascent ideas of liberty and rebellion? Or were they simply a practical response to the unique challenges of their profession? The connection between pirate ideals and wider social currents remains a fascinating area of historical inquiry. The rise of professional pirate hunters, sometimes former privateers or naval officers, also contributed to the decline. These individuals, often driven by bounties and a desire for fame, became adept at tracking and apprehending pirate vessels. They knew the pirate tactics, understood their havens, and relentlessly pursued them across the seas. You might hear whispers of a particularly tenacious hunter, his name spoken with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. You find yourself adapting to this unique social contract. You learn to voice your opinions, to participate in discussions, and to accept the collective decisions of the crew, even if you don't always agree. You learn to trust your shipmates, to rely on them in battle, and to share your meager comforts. It's a harsh life, but there's a strange sense of freedom in it, a liberation from the rigid class structures and brutal discipline of the world you left behind. The loss of key pirate leaders, either through capture, death in battle, or acceptance of a pardon, also dealt significant blows to the pirate enterprise. The charisma and tactical brilliance of figures like Blackbeard or Bartholomew Roberts were crucial in organizing and leading large pirate fleets. Their removal from the scene often led to the dispersal and weakening of their crews, as no one could quite fill their shoes. The concept of no prey, no pay was a fundamental tenet of pirate economics. If a pirate ship failed to capture any plunder, the crew received no wages. This system incentivized aggressive pursuit of targets and ensured that every man was motivated to contribute to the success of the voyage. It was a high-risk, high-reward profession, where success brought riches and failure brought nothing. You might even hear a sailor grumble, "Another day, another empty hold. Guess I'll be eating rats again tonight." The public perception of pirates also shifted. While initially romanticized by some as rebels against oppressive authority, the increasing disruption to trade and the growing power of the state led to a more unified condemnation of piracy as a criminal enterprise. Propaganda and official narratives painted pirates as ruthless villains, justifying the harsh measures taken against them. The public, once ambivalent, now largely supported their suppression. The informal education on a pirate ship was also significant. Experienced sailors would teach new recruits about navigation, seamanship, and combat. You learn by doing, by observing, and by making mistakes. It's a practical and hands-on education, driven by the immediate needs of survival and plunder. You might even find yourself teaching a younger recruit how to tie a complex knot, passing on the knowledge that keeps the ship running. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the long-term impact of the golden age of piracy on maritime law and international relations. Did the challenges posed by pirates force nations to develop more robust naval forces and more sophisticated legal frameworks for governing the high seas, thereby inadvertently contributing to the rise of modern international law? The legacy of piracy in shaping global maritime governance remains a fascinating and complex area of historical inquiry. The constant threat of mutiny, a very real danger on any ship of the era, was often mitigated by the pirate code and the democratic elements. By giving the crew a voice and a stake in the ship's operations, captains could often maintain loyalty and prevent the kind of brutal oppression that led to mutinies on naval and merchant vessels. It was a clever system, born of necessity and a desire for self-preservation. The gradual disappearance of safe havens was another critical factor. As naval powers asserted greater control over the Caribbean and other pirate strongholds, these once impenetrable sanctuaries became increasingly dangerous. Fortifications were built, garrisons established, and naval patrols intensified, making it difficult for pirates to resupply, repair their ships, or sell their plunder without risk of capture. The walls were closing in, slowly but surely. You learned that even amongst pirates, there were codes of honor, however twisted they might seem to outsiders. While they were ruthless with their enemies, there was often a strong sense of loyalty and mutual respect within the crew. Betrayal of a shipmate was a cardinal sin, often met with the harshest punishments. This internal cohesion was vital for their survival in a world that sought to destroy them. The shift from large, well-organized pirate fleets to smaller, more desperate bands also marked the decline. Without the ability to operate in large numbers, pirates became more vulnerable, less able to take on well-armed merchantmen or evade naval patrols. Their operations became more opportunistic, more desperate, and ultimately, less successful. The grand, audacious raids of earlier years gave way to a more precarious, hand-to-mouth existence. The pirate flag, the Jolly Roger, was more than just a symbol. It was a declaration of intent, a psychological weapon designed to strike fear into the hearts of their victims. Its appearance often meant that resistance was futile, and surrender was the only option. It was a powerful symbol of their collective identity, a banner under which they operated as a unified, albeit illicit, force. You might even hear a pirate boast that their flag was so scary, it could make a grown man wet his britches. The psychological toll on the remaining pirates was immense. The constant fear of capture, the dwindling prospects of plunder, and the knowledge that their way of life was rapidly disappearing led to a pervasive sense of fatalism. The once bright promise of freedom and riches was replaced by the grim reality of being hunted, with little hope of escape. You see it in the eyes of your comrades, a growing weariness, a quiet despair that even the strongest rum can't drown. The life of a pirate, while romanticized, was ultimately a dangerous and often short one. But within that brief, brutal existence, they forged a unique society, one that challenged the norms of their time, offering a glimpse into a world where common men had a voice, where justice was collective, and where freedom, however fleeting, was paramount. You are a part of that world now, living by its rules, sharing its dangers, and perhaps, just perhaps, finding a strange sense of belonging in its wild, untamed embrace. The stories of those who were caught and executed served as powerful warnings. The public hangings, often elaborate spectacles, were designed to instill fear and deter others from a life of piracy. The bodies of executed pirates were sometimes displayed in cages along the coastlines, left to rot as a gruesome reminder of the consequences of defying the crown. You might even hear a pirate joke that the only way to get a good view of the coastline now was from a gibbet. You've navigated the democratic intricacies of pirate life, understanding that even outlaws abide by certain codes. But now, as the days stretch into weeks at sea, a more insidious enemy begins to make its presence known, the relentless struggle for sustenance and the ever-present threat of disease. Your body, constantly exposed to the elements and subsisting on a monotonous diet, becomes a battleground for survival against the unseen forces of illness and malnutrition. The decline of piracy was not a sudden event, but a gradual process, a slow tightening of the noose. It was a testament to the relentless, coordinated efforts of powerful states determined to assert control over the seas. The era of the independent outlaw, the swashbuckling rebel, was drawing to a close, replaced by a more ordered, more controlled maritime world. The food on board is, to put it mildly, uninspired. Your daily fare consists primarily of hardtack, a dense, dry biscuit, often infested with weevils, and salted meat, usually pork or beef, preserved in brine. The hardtack is so tough, you sometimes have to soak it in water or coffee to make it palatable. And even then, it's like chewing on a brick. The salted meat is greasy and overwhelmingly salty, designed for preservation rather than taste. You eat quickly, often in silence, your senses dulled by the constant grime and the sheer monotony of the diet. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the extent to which the romanticized image of pirates, particularly in later literature and popular culture, obscures the harsh realities of their decline and the brutal suppression they faced. Did the legends inadvertently soften the true grimness of their end? Or did they serve to preserve a sense of rebellious spirit that resonated with later generations? The interplay between historical fact and cultural myth remains a rich area of study. Fresh provisions are a rare luxury, acquired only when you put into port or successfully raid a merchant vessel carrying fresh produce. The sight of a fresh fruit, a vegetable, or even a live animal for slaughter is cause for genuine excitement. You savor every bite, knowing that such delicacies are fleeting. The lack of fresh food, particularly fruits and vegetables, leads to a pervasive sense of dullness, a constant low-level hunger that never truly goes away. You find yourself contemplating your own future. Will you take a pardon, if one is still offered? Will you try to slip away, disappear into anonymity? Or will you fight to the bitter end, clinging to the last vestiges of a life that is rapidly fading? The choices are stark, and the odds are stacked against you. The freedom you once sought now feels like a cage, surrounded by the ever-present threat of capture and retribution. A common historical fact, devastatingly true for sailors of all stripes, including pirates, was the scourge of scurvy. This horrific disease, caused by a severe deficiency of vitamin C, would slowly and agonizingly debilitate a crew. Imagine your gums bleeding and swelling, your teeth loosening and falling out, old wounds reopening, your skin becoming covered in dark spots, and your limbs aching with unbearable pain. Eventually, without fresh citrus or vegetables, scurvy would lead to death. It was a silent killer, more effective than any cannonball in thinning out a ship's crew. The final legacy of the golden age of piracy is not just the tales of buried treasure or the fearsome Jolly Roger, but the story of its end. It's a narrative of state power asserting its dominance, of order slowly but surely overcoming chaos, and of a wild, untamed era being brought to heel. You are a witness to this historical turning point, a participant in the final, desperate acts of a dying breed. The creak of the ship, the mournful cry of the wind, and the distant, unseen presence of naval patrols are the grim lullabies of an era drawing to a close. A final, somber melody for the last days of the pirates. The water, since stored in wooden casks, quickly becomes stale and often contaminated. You drink it cautiously, trying to ignore the murky appearance and the peculiar taste. Sometimes it's mixed with rum or beer to make it more palatable and to kill some of the bacteria. But even then, it's a far cry from the fresh, clean water you once took for granted. You learn to ration your sips, each drop precious, knowing that dehydration is a constant threat in the relentless heat of the tropics. You might even hear a grim joke that the only thing older than the captain is the water in the casks. You've witnessed the slow, inevitable decline of the Golden Age, feeling the tightening grip of naval power and the dwindling opportunities for plunder. Now, as the era of the swashbuckling buccaneer fades into history, you begin to understand that the reality of pirate life, which you've experienced firsthand, is often starkly different from the vivid, romanticized legends that will grow around it. The truth, as you know it, is far grittier, more brutal, and less glamorous than the tales spun in taverns and books. Beyond scurvy, a host of other diseases plagued pirate ships. Dysentery, spread by contaminated food and water, would sweep through a crew, leading to severe dehydration and weakness. Typhus, carried by lice, caused fevers, rashes, and delirium. Smallpox, yellow fever, and malaria were also constant threats, particularly in tropical waters. A simple cut could quickly become infected, turning into a festering sore due to the unsanitary conditions and lack of proper medical care. You see men coughing, shivering with fever, their bodies succumbing to ailments that would be easily treatable on land. The image of pirates with parrots on their shoulders, buried treasure maps, and walking the plank are common historical facts that are largely mythical. While some pirates might have kept exotic pets, parrots were not a standard accessory, and the idea of meticulously drawn maps leading to vast, buried hoards of gold is almost entirely a product of fiction. Most notably, Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. Pirates, as you recall, preferred to spend their loot quickly, not bury it. Imagine the frustration of spending years at sea, only to find out your entire life's motivation was based on a lie from a children's story. A unique and little-known detail about pirate medicine was the role of the ship's cook, who often doubled as the ship's surgeon or barber surgeon. With no formal medical training, these individuals would perform rudimentary surgeries, amputations, and wound dressings, often using crude instruments and even cruder methods. Imagine a cook, whose primary skill is boiling salted meat, suddenly tasked with amputating a gangrenous limb with a saw and a bottle of rum for anesthesia. It was a desperate measure, often more terrifying than the injury itself. You might even hear a sailor quip that the cook's surgical skills were about as refined as his cooking, liable to leave you missing a few parts. You've lived the reality of hardtack and salted meat, not lavish feasts. You've battled scurvy and dysentery, not just rival ships. You've felt the constant dampness, the pervasive stench, and the gnawing fear, a far cry from the carefree adventures often depicted. The romantic notion of a pirate's life, full of endless freedom and easy riches, often glosses over the brutal discipline, the constant danger, and the short, often miserable lives of those who chose this path. The lack of hygiene on board contributed significantly to the spread of disease. Fresh water for washing was scarce, and bathing was a rare luxury. Clothes were rarely washed, leading to a pervasive stench and an abundance of lice and fleas. The cramped living conditions below deck meant that diseases could spread rapidly through the crew, turning a single illness into a full-blown epidemic. You are constantly itching, scratching at the bites of unseen parasites, a grim reminder of your degraded existence. A unique and little-known detail about pirate imagery is the evolution of the Jolly Roger flag. While the iconic skull and crossbones is widely recognized, there were numerous variations, often unique to individual captains. Some featured skeletons holding hourglasses or spears. Others showed bleeding hearts or daggers. These designs were not just for show. They were psychological weapons, intended to strike fear into the hearts of merchant crews and encourage surrender without a fight. Imagine the subtle terror of seeing a flag with a skeleton holding a spear, knowing that resistance meant certain death. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the true impact of diet and disease on the longevity and effectiveness of pirate crews. Did the constant battle against scurvy and other illnesses significantly limit their operational range and the duration of their voyages? Or were they more resilient than often portrayed, finding ways to mitigate these health risks through frequent port calls and opportunistic provisioning? The interplay between health, logistics, and pirate success remains a complex area of historical inquiry. The idea of pirates as noble rebels, fighting against oppressive governments or corrupt merchants, is often exaggerated. While some individuals might have been driven to piracy by harsh conditions and legitimate service, the primary motivation for most was, as you've seen, personal gain and the pursuit of wealth. They were criminals, albeit often operating under their own internal codes, and their actions caused immense suffering and disruption to global trade. The line between freedom fighter and ruthless plunderer was often blurred, but the reality leaned heavily towards the latter. Injuries, whether from battle, accidents, or the hazards of working on a ship, were also a constant threat. A fall from the rigging, a rope snapping, a cannon misfiring. Any of these could lead to broken bones, severe lacerations, or even death. Without proper medical facilities, even a seemingly minor injury could quickly become life-threatening due to infection. You learn to be incredibly careful, to watch your step, and to assist your comrades when they are injured. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the extent to which popular culture has distorted the historical reality of piracy. Have the romanticized portrayals in literature, film, and television created a false image that overshadows the grim truths of their lives? Or do these myths serve a valuable purpose in keeping the spirit of adventure and rebellion alive? The ongoing tension between historical accuracy and cultural narrative remains a complex area of scholarly inquiry. The ship's sick bay, if one existed at all, was usually a cramped, dark, and unsanitary corner below deck, offering little comfort or proper care. Men lay in hammocks, groaning with pain or shivering with fever, attended by the cook or surgeon with his limited knowledge and even more limited supplies. The sound of suffering is a constant backdrop to your life, a grim reminder of your own vulnerability. You've seen the harsh justice meted out on board, the floggings, the marooning, the hangings. This brutal reality stands in stark contrast to any notion of a truly utopian, egalitarian society on the high seas. While pirate ships did offer more democratic structures than naval vessels, they were still environments where discipline was paramount and life was cheap. The freedom they offered was often a freedom from societal constraints, not necessarily a freedom within a truly just society. The pain relief available was minimal, often limited to rum or laudanum and opium tincture. While these might dull the immediate agony, they offered no real cure for the underlying problem. Amputations, performed to prevent the spread of gangrene, were brutal affairs, often done without proper sterilization, leading to further complications. You witness these procedures with a mixture of horror and grim fascination, knowing that it could easily be you on that table. You might even hear a pirate joke that the rum was so strong, it was better than any anesthetic. The notion of pirates as master navigators, effortlessly sailing the globe, is also often overstated. While many were skilled seamen, their navigational tools were rudimentary, and their knowledge of distant lands often limited. Their voyages were primarily focused on known trade routes, and their ability to disappear into remote coves was often more about avoiding naval patrols than exploring uncharted territories. You might even hear a grim joke that the only thing a pirate truly navigated was the bottom of a rum bottle. The psychological toll of constant illness and injury was also significant. The sight of your comrades suffering, the knowledge that you could be next, and the pervasive sense of helplessness in the face of disease all contributed to a grim fatalism. You learn to accept the inevitability of suffering, to focus on the immediate present, and to find solace in the small moments of health and strength you still possess. The romantic image of pirate captains, always leading from the front with a sword in hand, also needs to be tempered with reality. While many were indeed brave and charismatic, their leadership also involved shrewd tactics, careful planning, and a pragmatic understanding of risk. They were entrepreneurs of crime, balancing the desire for plunder with the need to keep their crews alive and their ships operational. Their authority, while sometimes absolute in battle, was also dependent on the continued loyalty and success of their crew. The lack of fresh water also meant that personal hygiene was almost non-existent. You rarely, if ever, get to bathe properly. Your clothes are stiff with salt and grime, your hair matted and greasy. The smell of unwashed bodies is pervasive, a constant reminder of the unsanitary conditions. You might even hear a pirate quip that the only thing cleaner than their shirts is their conscience, which, as you know, isn't saying much. The idea of vast, hidden pirate treasures waiting to be discovered continues to fuel dreams of adventure. But as you've witnessed, pirate plunder was often perishable goods like food, rum, and textiles, or easily spent currency. Gold and jewels were rare, and when acquired, were quickly divided and spent in port. The notion of burying treasure was impractical and risky, making it a rare occurrence at best. You might even hear a pirate quip that the only treasure they ever buried was their last bottle of rum, and that was usually in their stomach. The diet, while monotonous, was often supplemented by fishing or hunting when near land. You might spend hours with a line in the water, hoping to catch something fresh to break the monotony of hardtack and salted meat. The successful catch of a fish or a turtle is a cause for celebration, a brief respite from the relentless diet. These small victories are vital for morale and for providing some much-needed nutrients. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the extent to which the golden age of piracy was a unique historical phenomenon, or if it was simply a particularly well-documented period within a long history of maritime raiding and privateering. Were the pirates of the Caribbean truly distinct, or were they part of a continuous tradition of seaborne outlaws that stretched back centuries? The precise definition and historical context of the Golden Age remain a subject of scholarly debate. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the true efficacy of traditional pirate remedies in folk medicine. Did their reliance on herbal concoctions, rum-based treatments, and superstitious practices offer any genuine medical benefit? Or were they largely ineffective against the prevalent diseases of the era? The intersection of historical medical practices and the realities of life at sea remains a fascinating area of study. You've seen the diverse makeup of pirate crews, including women and people of color. But the idea that pirate ships were entirely free of prejudice is likely an oversimplification. While necessity often fostered a pragmatic acceptance, underlying societal biases likely still existed. The freedom offered was relative, a stark contrast to the extreme oppression faced elsewhere, but not necessarily a utopian ideal. You might even hear a pirate joke that the only thing they cared about was the color of your gold, not the color of your skin. The constant exposure to the sun, wind, and sea spray also took its toll on your skin and eyes. Your skin becomes leathery and tanned, your eyes often red and irritated. Sunburn and windburn are common, adding to the general discomfort. You learn to squint against the glare to protect your face from the harsh elements. But the damage is inevitable. The notion of pirates speaking in a distinctive pirate accent or using specific phrases like "arr" is largely a modern invention, popularized by actors and writers. While sailors of the era had their own dialects and slang, there was no universal pirate speak. The language on board was a cacophony of various accents and languages, reflecting the diverse origins of the crew. Imagine trying to understand orders shouted in a mix of English, Dutch, French, and various Creoles, all while cannons are firing. You find yourself developing a strange resilience, a hardened acceptance of the discomfort and suffering. Your body adapts to the meager diet, the constant dampness, and the lack of sleep. You become tougher, more capable of enduring hardship. It's a grim transformation, but a necessary one for survival in this brutal environment. The romantic image of the pirate ship, sailing majestically across the open sea, often ignores the grim realities of its upkeep. You've experienced the constant battle against leaks, rot, and vermin. The ships were often repurposed merchant vessels, not purpose-built warships, and their maintenance was a constant struggle. They were working vessels, often dirty and cramped, not grand, pristine symbols of adventure. You might even hear a pirate complain that their ship was so old. It had more holes than a cheese grater. The psychological impact of being constantly hungry, thirsty, and uncomfortable is subtle but profound. It wears you down, eroding your spirit, making you more irritable and less resilient. You dream of fresh food, of cool, clean water, of a soft bed. But these are distant memories, replaced by the harsh reality of your present. The idea of pirates as invincible fighters, always winning every engagement, is also a myth. You've seen the risks, the dangers, and the very real possibility of failure. Many pirate ventures ended in disaster, with ships sunk, crews captured, or leaders executed. Their success relied on cunning, intimidation, and opportunism, not just brute force. They were often outnumbered and outgunned by naval vessels, making every encounter a high-stakes gamble. The pirates, despite their fearsome reputation, were ultimately vulnerable to the same forces of nature and disease as any other sailors. Their lives were often short, ended not just by cannon fire or the hangman's noose, but by the insidious, relentless march of illness and malnutrition. You are a testament to the fact that even the most feared figures of the sea were ultimately at the mercy of their environment, constantly battling for their very survival against invisible enemies. The creak of the ship, the slosh of stale water, and the constant itch of unseen pests are the grim lullabies of a life lived on the edge of endurance. The popular image of pirates burying their treasure on remote islands, marked by X on a map, is a captivating one, but historically inaccurate. Pirates rarely buried their loot, preferring to spend it quickly in port. The logistical challenges of burying and retrieving large amounts of treasure, combined with the short life expectancy of pirates, made such practices impractical. The few instances of buried treasure were often temporary measures, not long-term investments. You might even hear a pirate grumble that the only X they cared about was the one marking the spot for the next rum delivery. You've endured the gnawing hunger and the pervasive illnesses. Understanding that a pirate's life is a constant battle against the elements and the body's own frailties. Now, your focus shifts to the very heart of the pirate enterprise. The thrill of the chase, the brutal reality of the attack, and the complex, often surprising, system of dividing the spoils. This is why you're here, after all, not for the promise of plunder, the glimmer of gold that might just make all the suffering worthwhile. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the extent to which the pirate code, or articles, truly represented a form of social contract or early labor agreement, offering better conditions than legitimate maritime service. While they provided some protections, historians debate whether these were truly progressive ideals or simply pragmatic measures to ensure crew loyalty and prevent mutiny in a dangerous profession. The fairness of the pirate system remains a complex and often debated topic. The moment a sail is spotted on the horizon, a surge of adrenaline courses through the ship. The lookouts cry. Sail-ho electrifies the crew, transforming the monotonous routine into a focused, frenzied anticipation. You scramble to your station, your heart pounding, your eyes fixed on the distant speck that could mean fortune or failure. The ship springs to life, sails are adjusted, cannons are readied, and the air crackles with a palpable tension. This is the moment you've been waiting for. The reason you endure the hardtack and the scurvy. You've lived through the constant threat of disease, the lack of proper medical care, and the grim reality of amputation. This stands in stark contrast to any idealized image of healthy, robust adventurers. The toll on the body was immense, and few pirates lived to a ripe old age. Their lives were often cut short by illness, injury, or the hangman's noose, making the pursuit of fleeting riches a truly desperate gamble. The chase can be long and arduous, a test of seamanship and endurance. You push the ship to its limits, the wind whipping through the rigging, the waves crashing against the hull. Hours can pass, sometimes days, as you relentlessly pursue your prey across the vast expanse of the ocean. During this time, the ship is a hive of activity, every man focused on the singular goal of catching the merchant vessel. You might find yourself trimming sails, bailing water, or simply keeping a keen eye on the target, your muscles aching from the sustained effort. The notion of pirates as lone wolves, operating independently, ignores the complex networks of support they relied upon. Pirate havens, corrupt officials, and fences who bought their stolen goods were all vital to their survival. They were part of a larger illicit economy, relying on a network of collaborators to sustain their operations. They were not entirely self-sufficient, but rather cogs in a larger, shadowy machine. As you draw closer, the tension becomes almost unbearable. The target ship, often a heavily laden merchantman, tries desperately to escape, its sails straining, its crew scrambling. You can almost taste the fear in the air, the desperation of those you pursue. The captain, usually the most charismatic and daring, takes command, barking orders, his voice cutting through the wind. This is where his absolute authority, remember, truly comes into play in the heat of battle. There's no time for democratic debate. The romantic image of pirate romances with daring captains sweeping damsels off their feet is also largely a product of fiction. While relationships undoubtedly existed, they were often fleeting, pragmatic, and overshadowed by the harsh realities of their lives. The constant danger, the lack of stability, and the transient nature of their existence made long-term relationships difficult, if not impossible. You might even hear a pirate joke that the only true love they had was their ship, and even that tried to drown them sometimes. Then comes the attack. The pirate ship, often smaller and faster, maneuvers to gain the advantage, positioning itself to unleash its broadside. The cannons, which you've seen cleaned and maintained countless times, now roar to life, belching smoke and fire. The deck shudders with the recoil, the air fills with the acrid smell of gunpowder, and the sound is deafening. You see cannonballs rip through the enemy's rigging, splintering wood, tearing sails. The goal isn't always to sink the ship, but to disable it. to force a surrender without damaging the valuable cargo. The enduring fascination with pirates, despite the grim realities, speaks to a deeper human desire for freedom, adventure, and rebellion against authority. The myths, while inaccurate, tap into universal themes that resonate across generations. They offer an escape from the mundane, a glimpse into a world where rules are broken and fortunes are made. However fleetingly, a common historical fact, often overlooked in the dramatic portrayals, is that most pirate encounters did not involve prolonged, bloody battles. Pirates often relied on intimidation and psychological warfare. The sight of the Jolly Roger, that fearsome flag, was often enough to cause a merchant crew to surrender without a fight. Imagine the sheer terror of seeing that black flag, with its skull and crossbones rising on the horizon, knowing that your life and your cargo were now at the mercy of these notorious figures. It was a powerful deterrent, saving pirates valuable time, ammunition, and lives. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the degree to which the historical legacy of piracy has been used to justify or critique various forms of state power and economic exploitation. Have the stories of pirates been selectively interpreted to serve different political or social agendas? Or do they offer a genuine lens through which to understand the complexities of power, freedom, and justice in maritime history? The ongoing reinterpretation of pirate history highlights its enduring relevance. Once the target ship is disabled or boarded, the real work begins. You swing across on a grappling hook or clamber over the railing, cutlass in hand, ready for close quarters combat. The deck of the merchantman is a scene of chaos. Shouts, screams, the clash of steel. You fight with desperate ferocity, knowing that your life depends on quickly subduing the enemy crew. The struggle is brief, often brutal, and then, suddenly, it's over. The merchant crew, if they haven't resisted too fiercely, are usually rounded up, disarmed, and secured. You find yourself with a unique perspective. Having lived the truth behind the legends, you know the smell of the bilge, the taste of stale water, the feel of a cutlass in your hand, and the chilling reality of the gallows. You understand that the allure of piracy was real, but so too were its brutal consequences. The myths will continue to be told, passed down through generations, but you carry the true story within you, a silent testament to a life lived on the edge of legend and grim reality. The search for plunder is the next exhilarating phase. You swarm through the ship, ransacking cabins, breaking open crates, and searching every nook and cranny for valuables, gold, silver, jewels, silks, spices, rum, and provisions. Anything of value is fair game. The thrill of discovery is immense, the promise of riches a powerful motivator. You might find yourself laughing, shouting with joy, as you unearth a hidden stash of coins or a barrel of fine wine. It's a chaotic, exhilarating free-for-all, but beneath the surface, there's a method to the madness. The creak of the ship, the distant cry of gulls, and the whisper of the wind are the only true lullabies you know. The myths and legends will continue to swirl around the figures of pirates, painting them in colors far brighter and bolder than the reality. But you, the survivor, carry the truth in your bones, a silent, enduring testament to the harsh, unvarnished lives of those who dared to defy the world and sail under the black flag. Your tale is not of buried gold, but of enduring hardship, fleeting freedom, and the indelible mark left by a life lived on the very edge of existence. A unique and little-known detail about pirate plunder was the concept of dead men's chests or personal stashes. While the main plunder was divided according to the articles, many pirates would also have their own small, private hoards of particularly valuable items they had acquired, often hidden away in their sea chests or secreted within the ship. These were often items they intended to keep for themselves or trade later, outside of the official division. Imagine a pirate carefully tucking away a small, glittering jewel into a secret pocket, a tiny personal treasure amidst the larger haul. You have lived through the final days of the Golden Age, witnessed the collapse of a way of life, and seen the stark difference between myth and harsh reality. But now, with the guns silent and the Jolly Roger a distant memory, a new question arises. What happens to the survivors? Life after piracy, for those lucky or unlucky to escape naval encirclement and the death penalty, is a harrowing journey. a silent battle to find their place in a world that no longer has a place for them. The division of plunder, as you learned earlier, was governed by the articles. This was a meticulous process, overseen by the quartermaster. Every item of value was brought to the deck, tallied, and then divided into shares. The captain and officers typically received a larger share, perhaps 2 or 3 shares, while common sailors received 1. Musicians, carpenters, and other specialists might receive a slightly larger share for their unique skills. This system, while seemingly fair, was designed to incentivize loyalty and ensure that every man felt justly rewarded for his risks. For many, the end of their pirate life was not a victory but a surrender. You may have accepted a pardon or amnesty act from the government, a chance to give up the outlaw life in exchange for forgiveness. The initial relief of being released from the death penalty is great, but it quickly gives way to a harsher reality. You are a man with nothing, no reputation, no assets, and often no socially acceptable skills. You are a ghost of the past, wandering in a new world. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the actual wealth accumulated by the average pirate. While legends speak of vast hidden treasures, historians debate whether the typical pirate ever truly became rich, given the constant dangers, the need to spend money quickly in port, and the relatively short careers of most pirates. Was the promise of wealth a powerful myth that lured men to a dangerous life? Or did a significant number of pirates genuinely achieve lasting riches? The reality of pirate economics remains a fascinating and often elusive subject. A common but often misunderstood historical fact is that pardons are not always an easy ticket out. Although they offer forgiveness for past crimes, ex-pirates often face deep distrust and discrimination from society. Their names are tarnished, and finding legitimate work is often an uphill struggle. Imagine trying to find work on a merchant ship after spending years plundering it. You might hear a bitter joke that a pardon is just a way for the government to change the type of noose around your neck. The process of careening the ship, if the captured vessel was deemed worthy, was another aspect of the plunder. This involved beaching the ship and scraping the barnacles and marine growth from its hull, a necessary maintenance task that was often neglected on merchant vessels. It was dirty, back-breaking work, but essential for maintaining the ship's speed and seaworthiness, which directly impacted their ability to capture future prizes. You might even hear a pirate joke that careening a ship was the only time they got a proper bath, albeit a muddy one. Those who chose to accept the amnesty often had to seek a new life in remote places where their former reputation was less well known. Some became farmers. Others tried to integrate themselves into port towns, working odd jobs. This new life was a stark contrast to the freedom and reckless adventure of pirate life. You had to learn to work hard, live frugally, and stay out of trouble. Idleness, once a privilege, became a burden. The captured merchant crew faced a grim choice. They could be forced to join the pirate crew, often under duress, or they could be set adrift in a small boat, sometimes with minimal provisions, or simply marooned on a deserted island. Those with valuable skills like carpenters or navigators were often pressured to join. The decision was often brutal, a stark reminder of the pirates' power and the desperate circumstances of their victims. A unique and little-known detail about life after piracy is that some former pirates, especially those with skills in navigation or combat, were sometimes recruited by the very governments that had hunted them. They might become pirate hunters, or even privateers in later wars. It was a cruel irony that people who were once the greatest threat to trade were now being used to protect it. Imagine an ex-pirate hunting down his old comrades, using his extensive knowledge of the pirate world to track them down. For those who refused to accept the pardon or were captured, fate was often cruel. The death penalty was a common outcome, often by public hanging. These executions were carried out as a warning, a show of state power to deter others from the path of piracy. You may have witnessed these scenes, bodies dangling from gallows, a chilling reminder of the price of rebellion. The sale of plunder was often done in remote ports or pirate havens, where questions about the origin of the goods were not asked. These were bustling, lawless places, filled with merchants eager to buy stolen goods at a discount. The money, once acquired, was often spent quickly on rum, women, and gambling, reflecting the short-term, high-risk nature of their profession. The idea of saving for a comfortable retirement was often a distant dream, if it existed at all. You might hear a pirate quip. Easy come, easy go. That's the pirate's motto. One of the remaining scholarly debates is the extent to which former pirates were truly able to reintegrate into society. Were the psychological and physical scars of piracy too deep for them to ever find peace and acceptance in a lawful world? Or did some find a way to live a normal life, hiding from their past? The complexities of reintegration into society for those who have lived outside the law remain a challenging area of study. The psychological impact of plundering, of taking what isn't yours by force, is complex. For some, it's a thrill, a liberation from the constraints of society. For others, there might be a lingering sense of guilt or unease, suppressed by the need to survive and the allure of wealth. The act of violence, while often necessary, leaves its own mark, contributing to the hardening of the spirit that is so common among pirates. The invisible scars, the psychological legacy of piracy, continue to haunt you. Hypervigilance, nightmares of battles and lost lives. Emotional numbness, all are unwanted companions. You may find yourself startled by loud noises, having trouble sleeping, and feeling alienated from those who have not experienced what you have. The civilian world seems too loud, too simple, too foreign. The concept of honor among thieves, while often romanticized, did have some basis in reality, particularly regarding the division of plunder. Once the articles were agreed upon, any attempt to cheat or steal from the common stock was met with severe punishment, as it undermined the very foundation of their collective enterprise. This internal code was vital for maintaining order and trust within the crew. Loss of purpose is also a major challenge. For years, your life has been defined by survival, by the hunt for the next prey, by the freedom, however dangerous, of the sea. When that purpose is taken away, you feel lost, empty. The skills you learned on board ship, how to fight, how to endure, how to survive in harsh conditions, may seem irrelevant in your new life. You may hear a joke that the only thing you're really good at now is drinking rum and telling stories that no one believes. The psychological impact of living in such a diverse, yet dangerous community is profound. You learn to shed some of the prejudices you might have grown up with, forced by necessity to judge individuals on their actions rather than their origins. It's a harsh education, but one that broadens your perspective and challenges your preconceived notions of the world. For a few, life after piracy may be a return to legitimate maritime life. But with a newfound caution, they may find work on merchant ships, using their seamanship, but always on guard, always looking over their shoulders. They carry with them secrets of the past, untold stories, and a deep understanding of the dangers of the sea. They are seasoned sailors, but they are also haunted souls. The use of letters of marque by privateers, essentially government-issued licenses to attack enemy shipping, often blurred the lines between legitimate privateering and outright piracy. Many pirates started their careers as privateers during wartime, and simply continued their activities after the war ended, turning their attention to any ship that crossed their path. This legal ambiguity allowed some to justify their actions, at least to themselves. You might even hear a pirate joke that they were just freelance naval contractors who occasionally got a little carried away. Guilt is also a heavy burden. Guilt for surviving when others could not. Guilt for the actions you took to survive. Guilt for the memories that haunt you. It is a burden that simmers, a silent companion that whispers in quiet moments, reminding you of the horrors you have witnessed and the lives you have lost. The constant threat of being hunted by naval vessels, particularly the Royal Navy, meant that pirates were always on the move, never staying in one place for too long. They relied on speed, stealth, and their knowledge of remote coves and hidden islands to evade capture. The life of a pirate was a constant game of cat and mouse, with the stakes being your life. This nomadic existence further contributed to the transient nature of their wealth and their inability to settle down. You can find solace in the company of other former pirates, the only people who truly understand what you have been through. You gather in quiet taverns and veterans' halls, sharing dark jokes and silent nods of recognition. There is a bond between you that goes beyond words, a common understanding forged in the crucible of pirate life. You don't have to explain, they already understand. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the role of pirate havens like Nassau or Port Royal in sustaining the golden age of piracy. Were these truly lawless sanctuaries that allowed pirates to thrive? Or were they more complex economic hubs where legitimate trade and illicit activities intertwined? with authorities often turning a blind eye for economic gain. The true nature of these pirate strongholds remains a subject of ongoing historical research. Some former pirates, unable or unwilling to integrate, may return to a life of crime, but in a different form. They may become highway robbers, smugglers, or engage in other illegal activities on land. Outlaw life is all they know, and adjusting to a normal life is too difficult. Their fate is often a vicious cycle of crime and punishment. You find yourself adapting to the rhythm of plunder, the anticipation, the chase, the attack, the division, and then the swift spending. It's a cycle that defines your existence, a desperate gamble for a fleeting moment of luxury. The gold coins feel heavy in your hand, a tangible reward for the dangers you face. But you know, deep down, that this life is precarious, and the riches you acquire are as fleeting as the wind in the sails. Social isolation is a harsh reality. You feel like an outsider, unable to relate to the worries and experiences of those who have never sailed under a black flag. Their complaints seem trivial, their joys superficial. You carry a secret knowledge, an experience shared by only a few, and this knowledge sets you apart. You may hear a joke that you still check to see if anyone is watching you before crossing the street. Just in case. Physical scars, even if healed, remain a constant reminder. A sword scar, a prosthetic leg from a battle wound, or a persistent cough from seasickness. These are tangible signs of the past. They are evidence of your survival, but also a source of chronic pain and a barrier to returning to normal life. The psychological impact of being constantly on the run, of living a life outside the law, is profound. You learn to trust no one outside your immediate crew, to be constantly wary, to always look over your shoulder. The freedom you gain comes at the cost of constant paranoia and the knowledge that a hangman's noose could be waiting for you at any port. One of the remaining open academic debates is the extent to which former pirates contributed to the development of coastal communities after they abandoned their piracy. Were their skills and experience, however illicit, used to build and develop port towns, or were they still seen as a threat and marginalized? Their legacy in shaping coastal settlements remains a complex area of study. The stories of buried treasure, while largely mythical, served a powerful purpose. They fueled the imagination, lured new recruits, and became a central part of the pirate legend. While pirates rarely buried their treasure, preferring to spend it quickly, the idea of a hidden hoard continues to captivate. You might even hear a pirate grumble about how much easier life would be if they actually found one of those mythical buried chests. You may find yourself turning to coping mechanisms, some healthy, some less so. Alcohol can provide temporary relief from nightmares, a brief numbing of pain. Isolation seems preferable to attempts to connect with others. These are desperate attempts to manage the overwhelming burden of your experiences, to find some peace in a mind that has been permanently altered. The life of a pirate, centered around the pursuit and division of plunder, was a brutal, dangerous, but often alluring alternative to the harsh realities of legitimate maritime service. It offered a chance at wealth, freedom, and a voice, however brief, in a world that otherwise offered little to common men. You are a participant in this high-stakes game, living by its rules, risking your life for its rewards, and forever marked by the thrill of the chase and the gleam of stolen gold. The roar of the cannons, the clash of steel, and the clink of coins are the grim lullabies of a life lived for plunder. A life where every prize is a temporary reprieve from the inevitable. The change in identity is profound. The young man who dreamed of adventures at sea is gone, replaced by an older, wiser, more damaged man. Innocence is lost, ideals are shattered, and the world is seen through a darker, more cynical lens. These are the invisible wounds, the silent burdens that ex-pirates carry, a testament to the terrible price of the outlaw life, a price that continues to be paid long after the last ship has docked. You've experienced the adrenaline of the chase and the brutal reality of plunder, understanding that the pursuit of wealth drives much of pirate life. Now, as you spend more time among the crew, you begin to notice something that defies the popular image of pirates as a homogeneous band of rough, unkempt men. The reality on board, and in the pirate havens you visit, is far more complex, revealing a surprising tapestry of individuals, including women, people of color, and those from vastly different backgrounds. all drawn to this dangerous yet strangely liberating existence. Life after piracy is not a fairy tale of riches and happiness. It is a story of survival, of facing the consequences of past choices, and of finding a place in a world that no longer accepts you. You are a living witness to this legacy, a silent reminder of the terrible secrets that lie deep in the hearts of those who dared to live outside the law, and the price they paid for their freedom. The sound of waves crashing on the shore, the wind whistling through empty alleys, and the sighs of memory are sad lullabies of a life changed forever. You have survived dangerous times, witnessed the decline of an era, and carried the invisible scars of a life of piracy. Now, with pirate ships long forgotten, and black flags a mere image in books, you realize that the legacy of pirates lies not only in tales of treasure and fierce battles, but also in the profound, lasting impact they left on human history and culture. You might first encounter women not as captives, but as active participants in the pirate world. While rare, female pirates like Anne Bonny and Mary Red are a common historical fact, challenging the notion of piracy as an exclusively male domain. Imagine the sheer audacity and courage it would take for a woman to defy societal norms, disguise herself as a man, and thrive in such a brutal, male-dominated environment. Their stories, though few, are powerful testaments to the allure of freedom and the desperate circumstances that could drive individuals to such extremes. You might hear whispers about their ferocity in battle, their cunning, and their ability to command respect among their male counterparts. Though hunted down and eventually defeated, pirates left an indelible mark on the collective imagination. Tales of their daring, freedom, and rebellion continue to be told, transforming them into legendary figures far beyond the harsh realities of life. You can see their images in plays, songs, and later in books, always with a strange appeal, an allure to those who dream of escaping the shackles of society. The presence of people of color on pirate ships is another striking reality. Many enslaved Africans, escaping the horrific conditions of plantations or merchant vessels, found refuge and even a degree of equality on pirate ships. For them, joining a pirate crew was often a desperate act of liberation, offering a chance at freedom and a share of the plunder that was unimaginable in the rigid, oppressive societies of the time. You see men with dark skin, speaking different languages, working alongside Europeans, a stark contrast to the racial hierarchies prevalent in the legitimate world. It is a well-known historical fact that the romantic image of pirates, especially in the 19th and 20th centuries, was heavily shaped by literary works such as Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. These stories created the pirate stereotypes we still recognize today: the wooden leg, the parrot on the shoulder, the treasure map marked with an X. Imagine a world where the stories you've lived through were retconned into fantastical adventures, far removed from the painful truth. You might hear the joke that if those writers had actually spent a day on a pirate ship, they would have written a completely different story. A unique and little-known detail about the diversity on pirate ships was the presence of individuals from various European nations, as well as indigenous peoples from the Caribbean and Americas. Pirate crews were often a true melting pot of nationalities and cultures, speaking a cacophony of languages and bringing diverse skills and perspectives to the ship. This multicultural environment fostered a unique form of camaraderie, where shared risk and mutual benefit often transcended national or racial divides. Imagine a conversation on deck where English, French, Dutch, and various Creole languages are all being spoken, a true Babel of buccaneers. The legacy of pirates is also reflected in their influence on international maritime law. The rise of piracy during the Golden Age forced the great powers to cooperate more closely to protect trade routes and enforce the law at sea. This led to the development of treaties, rules of jurisdiction, and stronger navies, all aimed at controlling and eliminating the pirate threat. You were once part of the problem, and now you are a witness to the solution. The reasons for this diversity are complex. For many, a piracy offered an escape from dire poverty, harsh discipline, or social injustice in their home countries. For others, it was the promise of adventure, or simply a desperate attempt to survive in a brutal world. The pirate ship, for all its dangers, could be seen as a microcosm of a more egalitarian society, where a man's worth was judged not by his birth or his skin color, but by his skill, his courage, and his loyalty to the crew. A unique and little-known detail is how some nautical words and terms that originated during the pirate era have become part of the common language. phrases like loot, scurvy dog, or walk the plank have entered the lexicon, bringing with them a taste of life at sea. Imagine a word that was once a part of your dangerous daily life now being used comfortably in casual conversation. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the true extent of racial equality on pirate ships. While many accounts suggest a more egalitarian environment for people of color compared to legitimate vessels, historians debate whether this was a genuine commitment to anti-racism or merely a pragmatic necessity born of shared danger and the need for skilled labor. Did a black pirate truly have the same opportunities and respect as a white pirate? Or were there subtle, unspoken hierarchies that still persisted? The complexities of race and power within pirate societies remain a nuanced area of scholarly inquiry. Piracy also left a legacy in the concepts of freedom and rebellion. For many, they represent a rejection of social norms, personal freedom, and resistance to oppressive authority. Even though their lives are filled with violence and danger, the idea of living outside the law, of being in control of your own destiny, holds a powerful appeal. You have felt that freedom, however fleeting and risky it may be. One of the remaining scholarly debates is whether pirates were truly pioneers of democratic and social egalitarian ideas. While their articles represented a surprising degree of democracy compared to legal vessels, was this a true ideal or merely a pragmatic way of maintaining order and preventing rebellion in a dangerous environment? Their legacy as social reformers remains a complex and controversial topic. You also encounter women in pirate havens, not just as prostitutes or tavern keepers, but as independent figures, running businesses, managing finances, and sometimes even acting as informants or facilitators for pirate operations. These were often strong, resilient women who carved out a living in a rough, male-dominated world, demonstrating a resourcefulness that was essential for survival. Their presence adds another layer to the complex social fabric of the pirate world, showing that the influence of women extended beyond the few who took up arms. The cultural legacy of pirates is also reflected in festivals, costumes, and games. Today, people dress up as pirates, participate in parades, and play games inspired by life at sea. These images, though softened and romanticized, still retain some of the spirit of adventure and rebellion you once knew. You may find it ironic that images of your life, once filled with fear and suffering, are now being used for entertainment. The role of indentured servants, or forced men on pirate ships, is another aspect of their diverse crews. Many individuals were not willing pirates, but were coerced into joining after their merchant vessels were captured. Some were skilled craftsmen, navigators, or surgeons, whose expertise was invaluable to the pirate crew. While initially unwilling, many eventually adapted to pirate life, finding it preferable to the harsh conditions of legitimate service, or simply accepting their new reality. You might hear a grim joke that the only thing worse than joining a pirate crew willingly is joining one unwillingly, because at least then you can blame someone else. The impact of pirates on the economy and trade was also significant. At their height, they caused massive damage to maritime trade, forcing companies and governments to invest in expensive protection measures. Their presence shaped trade routes, affected the prices of goods, and even spurred the development of new maritime technologies to counter attacks. You were once part of that disruptive force, and now you witness its lasting consequences. The ship itself, as you recall, operates on a democratic principle, where the crew often had a say in decisions and punishments. This system, while not perfect, provided a degree of fairness that was often absent in the rigid hierarchies of naval vessels, where flogging and arbitrary cruelty were common. This internal justice system, however brutal, offered a sense of agency to the common sailor, regardless of his background. The diversity of pirate crews, including women and people of color, also left an important legacy. It challenged stereotypes about maritime society at the time and showed that, in an outlawed environment, social barriers could be broken down for practical purposes. Their stories are a reminder that freedom and opportunity can sometimes be found in unexpected places, even in a dangerous world. The presence of diverse languages and cultures on board meant that communication could sometimes be a challenge. However, a common pidgin or creole often developed, allowing crew members to understand each other and work together effectively. This linguistic melting pot further contributed to the unique identity of pirate crews, setting them apart from the more homogeneous crews of national navies. You might even hear a pirate quip that the only universal language on board was the sound of cannon fire. One of the remaining scholarly debates is the extent to which the legacy of piracy has been used to justify or criticize various forms of state power and economic exploitation. Are pirate stories selectively interpreted to serve various political or social agendas? Or do they provide a genuine lens through which to understand the complexities of power, freedom, and justice in maritime history? The reinterpretation of pirate history remains a rich area of research. The lure of a shared fortune, as you learned in the previous chapter, was a powerful unifying force. Regardless of their origin, every man who signed the articles was entitled to a share of the plunder. This equitable distribution of wealth, a radical concept for its time, fostered a sense of collective ownership and mutual interest. It meant that a former slave could potentially earn as much, or even more, than a former English sailor. A truly revolutionary idea. You may find yourself with a strange sense of pride. Although your life has been filled with difficult choices and terrible moments, you have lived a life that is different, one that few would dare to dream of. You have witnessed things that most people only read about in books, and you have lived to tell the tale. It is a personal legacy, a testament to human strength and resilience. The legacy of piracy is also reflected in local place names and legends. Many islands, bays, and caves in the Caribbean and beyond still bear the names of famous pirates, or are associated with stories of buried treasure. These places have become destinations for adventure seekers who want a taste of that wild past. The constant threat of being hunted by naval forces also contributed to the internal cohesion of pirate crews. Faced with a common enemy and the grim prospect of the gallows, pirates often developed fierce loyalties to one another, transcending their diverse backgrounds. They were all outlaws together, bound by shared danger and a common fate. This shared vulnerability fostered a strong sense of camaraderie, a brotherhood born of necessity. The fascination with pirates continues to this day, not only as entertainment but also in discussions of freedom, justice, and rebellion. They are complex icons, both brutal criminals and fighters for individual liberty. Their legacy is a reminder that history is often not black and white, and that bad characters sometimes have fascinating and controversial aspects. You observe the subtle ways in which differences were navigated. While prejudices undoubtedly existed, the immediate demands of survival and the need for a cohesive fighting force often pushed them aside. A man's skill with a cutlass, his ability to climb the rigging, or his knowledge of navigation mattered more than his nationality or the color of his skin. It was a pragmatic form of acceptance, born of the harsh realities of their profession. You, who lived through those days, carry a living legacy. You are the bridge between myth and fact, between past and present. The scars on your body and soul are a testament to the price of freedom and rebellion. But you are also a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the ability to adapt and survive even in the harshest of circumstances. The legacy of piracy is not just the stories told, but the lives lived, the marks left, and the lessons that resonate to this day. The presence of children on pirate ships, though rare, is another unusual aspect of their diverse communities. Sometimes children were taken as captives and later integrated into the crew, serving as cabin boys or apprentices. While a grim reality, it highlights the desperate circumstances that could lead to such lives, and the strange, often brutal ways in which pirate crews reconstituted themselves as makeshift families. You might see a young boy, no older than 12, scurrying across the deck, his face smudged with tear, already hardened by life at sea. As the final waves of the story subside, and the last pirate ship disappears from the horizon, you feel a deep silence envelop you. No more shouts of battle. No more wind whistling through the sails. Just the peace of the night. You close your eyes, breathe deeply, feel the breeze on your face. The images of pirate life, of danger and freedom fade away, replaced by a sense of safety and warmth. You are no longer at sea. You are home. Though the pirate tales will still be told, you know the truth. Let those memories fade into the darkness, like old ships drifting toward the horizon. Let your mind rest, heal, you are safe, you made it. Let your dreams carry you away. The pirate havens, like Nassau or Port Royal, were themselves incredibly diverse places, bustling with people from all corners of the globe. Merchants, prostitutes, runaway slaves, adventurers, and outlaws all mingled in these lawless ports, creating a vibrant, chaotic, and often dangerous melting pot of cultures. These havens provided a safe harbor for pirates to resupply, repair their ships, and spend their ill-gotten gains, further fostering the diverse nature of their world. You might even hear a pirate joke that the only place more diverse than their ship was the tavern in Nassau. The stories of pirates, while often romanticized, are also a testament to the human spirit's capacity for adaptation and resilience. Faced with extreme hardship and social exclusion, individuals from diverse backgrounds found a way to survive, to thrive, and to forge a unique identity in the margins of society. Their lives, however brutal and short, offered a glimpse into an alternative social order, one that challenged the rigid norms of the time. One of the academic debates still open for discussion is the extent to which the diversity on pirate ships contributed to their success or failure. Did the varied skills and perspectives of a multicultural crew make them more adaptable and effective? Or did internal tensions and linguistic barriers sometimes hinder their operations? The role of diversity as a strategic asset or a potential liability in pirate warfare remains a complex and intriguing area of historical analysis. You find yourself becoming accustomed to this eclectic mix of personalities and backgrounds. You learn to communicate across language barriers, to appreciate the unique skills of each crew member, and to find common ground in the shared pursuit of plunder and survival. It's a strange, unconventional family you've found yourself a part of, but a family nonetheless, bound by the shared experience of life outside the law. The social structure on a pirate ship was also surprisingly fluid. Unlike naval vessels where officers came from aristocratic backgrounds, on a pirate ship, any man could rise through the ranks based on skill, bravery, and the respect of his peers. A common sailor could become a quartermaster, a boatswain, or even a captain, if he proved his worth. This meritocracy was another radical concept, offering opportunities that were impossible in the rigid class systems of the legitimate world. You might even hear a grizzled veteran quip, "On this ship, your birth doesn't matter, only how well you can swing a cutlass and hold your rum. Hey guys, tonight we're going to set sail. Not on a luxury cruise, but on a creaking, groaning wooden ship, propelled by the wind and the sheer audacity of its crew. We're diving deep into the true lives of pirates, beyond the Hollywood swashbuckling and the parrots on shoulders. Imagine the salty spray hitting your face, the constant sway of the deck beneath your feet, and the distant cry of gulls. This isn't just a story. You're going to feel the sun on your skin, the rough hemp of the ropes in your hands, and perhaps, just perhaps, understand that a pirate's life was far from a vacation. A little heads up if you were actually a pirate. Chances are you wouldn't have lived long enough to tell many tales. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.